Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
The screaming Nord Lead 2 synthesizer, one of the many keyboards you'll hear on today's show. My name is Eric. I'm here with keyboard playing Michael Kester.
I have been known to play a keyboard once or twice in my life.
On occasion, I guess.
Yeah.
And, man, just fucking ready to... Today's feature, I guess, is a beep boop, beep boop. That's about all I have.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
This is, in fact, a double feature. There are going to be two movies. Mm-hmm. And why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what those goddamn movies are? What's the first one?
We're gonna do Tron.
So the one from like last year that has the stuff and the things.
No, the like Tron.
Oh, due to Disney's brainwipe, I've never actually heard of that film, so that should be interesting.
And then we're gonna do Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh my god! So we have some fucking spoilers. We're gonna spoil both movies, of course. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about both the original Tron and some Tron Legacy stuff.
Uh-huh.
We'll sprinkle it throughout, let's say. So if you really give a shit about what happens in either of those movies, and you don't, then you can use the chapters to skip over to Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yep.
Probably the last time I'll use the full title of that film. Also, I'll be really honest with you. I'm going to talk about arcades a lot. And totally understand if you get bored with that, use the fucking chapters, skip to the next movie. I'm really excited about this show today because normally I'm the only one who geeks out on the show.
Right.
And I have to excuse myself all the time when I talk about something technical or nerdy. And I think that's just that's the fucking core of both of these movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? You know, every time we mention a video game on the show, there's seriously a mass exodus of our listenership.
Yeah.
You can see that in the traffic numbers in our website, in the iTunes feed. People leave, about 2/3 of our audience leaves every time we make a video game reference.
Yep.
Even now that I've used the term video game twice, I would say 9/10 of our listenership has shut off their portable music playing device. My point was that I don't like being told what to do, and I know you're probably not a fan of that either, so fuck those people who already left, who probably didn't download the show to begin with. We're just going to have to talk some games today.
Yeah.
If you want one of those shows that's heavy and real message and cute computers and AI, and watch Colossus.
Yeah,
right?
we did that with Colossus and Planet of the Apes. That was that show.
But go back and listen to that show. You didn't watch Colossus, the Forbidden Project. I know you didn't watch it. So go back and watch that movie and listen to that show. But for now, it's fucking Tron time. So a long time ago, we said Disney films on the show.
Right.
Is that what this is?
Yeah, no. I mean, kind of.
I think it's cheating that this is our first Disney film.
That's exactly the way we should do it.
It's kind of the black sheep of the Disney films.
It's more like the glowing blue sheep.
I was going to say the black sheep of the Disney films are the incredibly racist cartoons that they decided to kind of pull off shelves and not release on DVD. But this is our way of doing a Disney film.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to sort of pick, I don't even know if I would call Tron the underdog.
No.
It's a weird spot it's in now because of Tron Legacy.
Yeah, well, also it's mass cult appeal, which apparently I still don't understand.
That puts it in double feature territory, though,
for
doesn't
sure.
it? Yeah, the cult appeal could come from a couple places, I guess. It comes from a little nostalgia, which we'll talk about that today.
Yep.
And I think that's the only place the cult appeal comes from.
There's some other thing that makes people really latch onto Tron, but I don't have it. It's not in my brain.
Well, so there's a lot of notable stuff it does.
Mm-hmm.
So we have cult appeal, we got notable stuff, totally double feature worthy.
Absolutely.
Right away. But beyond that, I know people our age, people who didn't grow up with Tron particularly, who loved the movie, had never seen it before, recent years. And who aren't in it because it was the first movie to do this, or, I guess those are the two reasons, right?
Yeah.
First movie to do this or nostalgia. I don't know why. I've tried to get coherent reasons out of these people, but there's several of them. And so there's an audience for this movie even today. So it's a film that's, it's only kind of Disney. It's
PG, or G rated. That's Disney enough for me. If a film is PG or G rated, that just, as far as I'm concerned, it's Disney.
It might as well be Disney, even if Disney Co. did not have anything to do with it. The financial backing and basically the script edits came from Disney. So they decided, we'll pay for this movie. They were essentially the producer.
Sure.
But they wouldn't help with anything beyond the money. When the people who made Tron actually went to them to ask about animation, they said, fuck it. Animators, we don't have any of those here. Don't know what you're talking about, man.
Disney is not an animation-based company.
Yeah, we don't have an animation studio. We cannot help you. So they turned to the machine. This is often cited as the original film to really use CGI. And when I say CGI, I want to make that distinction too. We talked about that before. Not computer enhancements,
right,
but actually computer-generated imagery.
Right. Things
completely created from the machine.
Like a light cycle?
Yeah, like the light cycle scenes. And, not even a lot of the backgrounds of the movie, because backgrounds, matte painting, that stuff has existed since people were using cars in movies. Since fucking Metropolis, right? I mean, that stuff's existed for a long time. But this isn't just using computers to make a funny background and put it into the movie. This is generating objects that move inside your film that are completely made by computers. The bit, the light cycles, basically anytime anything computer animated also moves. There's motion as well.
Right.
That kind of animation I would consider computer generated imagery. And I think Tron should get a huge credit for bringing computers into movies.
It should also get an equal discredit for bringing computers into movies.
I was just going to say, that's not always been a great thing.
Right.
But in rare occasions, it's done some pretty great stuff.
Well, yeah, I would definitely say that, and I've always said this, that there is a place in film for computer generation.
When did you say that? I've never heard that out of your fucking mouth.
I've always thought that, you can use it. Don't use it in lieu of something that would clearly make a better decision.
Right.
Don't do it because it's easy. Don't do it because it's an easy way out. And it looks good enough. We talked about this back, last year when we did Lawnmower Man in Jurassic Park?
Sure, and any movie that's ever had models, Dark City comes to mind.
Sure. So, I mean, if you want to hear that conversation ad nauseum, go back to one of those shows. But essentially, I don't like CG.
It's a doesn't stand up over time thing.
Exactly.
It's funny because the idea, by the way, to do Tron and Scott Pilgrim, that's going to totally seem like my idea. I can't take any credit for that. That was all you, sir.
Yeah, that was my idea.
And you didn't even have Tron. So
Nope.
You told me, you said, Eric, I know you don't have Tron, but we need to get that so we can watch it on the show, which isn't usually how this shit works.
Yeah.
I would say most times one of us has it. Not all the time, but most times, or at least we know there's a conversation there. You said Tron, and that was out of left field to me. So I actually got us an HD copy.
Yeah,
because
you
I
did.
thought that would be the funniest fucking thing in the universe.
It was funny for the first maybe 45 minutes.
And then it was terrifying.
Yep.
So terrifying. So I enjoy the parts of Tron that other people probably hate. Everybody thinks of Tron and thinks about the fucking costumes.
The Tron guy.
The light stuff. Yeah, all that stuff. And I really, really love the live action parts of Tron. I guess they're all live action, the things done on a soundstage. So, hey, credit for soundstage movie too. When we're going around saying Sin City, the first thing created on a sound, well, that's clearly not true. There's a lot of soundstage stuff in Tron, although it wasn't made 100% on a soundstage. Still pretty cool. But the parts I like are the beginning of the movie, hanging out in Flynn's arcade. I like just being back in that arcade 80s atmosphere. And everything before going into the computer. And I realize for a lot of people, that's probably being in the private detective's office in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Right.
I mean, that's not what you come to the film for. But goddamn, I love those parts.
It's I would definitely say that it's better than all of the defragging all the megabytes or whatever the fuck happens.
Reboot. When you think about the popular culture symbols that have come out of it, you think of stuff like Tron Guy.
Tron Guy.
Right? I don't know how much Tron Guy we really need to explain on the show.
Google.
There's
Google
a man,
and Tron Guy.
There's a man in a Tron suit. That's really, I think, all that needs to be said. People have the internet.
Sure.
But also Moses from South Park.
Right.
Which is just the master computer.
Master Control.
Master Control, thank you, from Tron. I don't actually care about the pop icons. For me, the best thing about Tron, new or old, original Tron or Tron Legacy, is the fucking arcade culture.
Yeah.
Rarely do you have movies that are so... The only other one I can think of off the top of my head is The Wizard. I mean, you don't have a lot of movies about the arcade.
Yeah.
There really should be some kind of arcade exploitation, but that genre does not yet exist.
Yeah, it also doesn't really have a wide enough audience.
I would buy every one of those movies.
Yeah,
sir.
I know, but you already discussed that most of our audience would turn away at even the sight
It's true.
of
It's
a
true.
video
They hate
game.
it. Oh, God. And we'll get to that with Scott Pilgrim and that poor movie. So what I love about arcade culture is that it's really the only piece of my life. This is just part of getting old, I guess, and this shit happens, that disappears over time.
Mm-hmm.
When fucking old people talk about the way it used to be and the 5-cent candy bar and I don't talk to old people, so I don't know what they...
When I was your age?
Right, but you're aware of these things, right? That used to exist in old people time and don't exist anymore.
Sure.
And the only thing I've ever missed in my life that's disappeared, I'm all for forward technology. I love getting rid of the typewriter and entering the Apple II and getting rid of the Apple II and entering the fucking personal home computer. I love getting rid of CDs and replacing it with MP3s. I'm all for forward pushing technology. However, the home console has destroyed the arcade.
Yeah.
There used to be these things that you went to called arcades, where you had all
absolutely
these
fantastic.
You had these
every mall.
cabinets.
Remember when malls existed?
Oh,
every
yeah.
mall had an arcade.
Those still exist, you city living asshole. There is one in Chicago.
Does it
I have
have
to
an
go
arcade?
there to... I don't know. I just go
Not
there to
important.
buy my mall pants. I don't actually know. I really wish the people who listen to the show had any idea what we look like. It's hilarious. So you go to these arcades and you would spend... What would it take? Maybe $20 to play in the arcade?
Oh, yeah.
If I gave you $20, Michael Kester Jr. to go to an arcade,
Right.
how long could you play your favorite arcade game with $20?
Oh,
Give me a realistic figure. How long would that really last?
maybe an hour.
Yeah, that's about an hour worth, right? I mean, if you wanted to play in the arcades for 2 or 3 hours, you might spend $50.
It depends on how good you are, and it depends on what games you're playing.
And it depends how the arcade dealers have the machines
Yeah,
cranked.
that's
too.
true.
Because most arcades would have settings on them where you could change the difficulty, otherwise known as the quarter sucker setting. And no one ever spent $50 in an arcade because you never hung out in an arcade actively playing for more than an hour.
Right.
You ran out of $20, and that's the point where you said, "Wow, that sucked. I wasted all that money."
But then
It's
you would
gone now."
kind of walk around.
Yeah, you'd
and-
still wander
So
around.
you see in Tron everybody watching him play Light Cycle.
Yeah, right.
And everybody's crowded around, and you think, oh yeah, I'm sure he's such a great player that people are even spectating. Yeah, I get the point. But the thing is, due to the nature of an arcade, people would run out of money and their ride wouldn't be there to pick
Yep,
them up
that's
yet.
it.
So they would just have to kind of walk around and look at the coolest game, see people. We did the King of Kong a
Yeah, I was
while
just
ago.
thinking about that. We didn't talk about arcade culture at all on that.
And you just have people that are kind of watching other people do really well. It's all positive reinforcement. Nobody is there to fucking knock your score out.
Right,
or if they
right.
do, it's a challenge and not
Sure,
a
it's
knockdown.
honorable.
And it's all just everything is really positive. The only thing that really is negative about it is that you end up with a lot less money than you walked in there with, and a lot fewer tickets than you needed for whatever prize you were hoping to get.
Oh God, and I always despise the tickets.
Me too.
I would not play an arcade game that. I think Whack-A-Mole was probably the most tickets I would ever go to an arcade for, but I always played, the type of X-Men four-person.
The cabinet games.
I was thinking of the clones of, they had the Simpsons one, and just clones of 4 people would walk down a 2D platform, a street.
With a
and
vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, right, and beat up whatever the enemy was. But then they also had the fighting games, which were great. I think again of the Marvel stuff. But Marvel versus Capcom or X-Men versus Street Fighter,
Mortal
all
Kombat.
that shit. Yeah, Tekken. Mortal Kombat was a great one. Mortal Kombat was an amazing arcade. But you had the nature of it was almost sports for nerds. You know what I mean? There was
It was like Nerd Olympics.
there was a lot of spectating to it. People would gather around, and that was just the nature of hanging out in the arcade. It was almost like a bar with video games instead of alcohol. And all of these people, a lot of which weren't very social individuals. That was something you saw in the arcade a lot. People would just come right up next to you. They would stand right next to you and challenge you in a game.
Sure.
And the game was set up in such a way where that's just how it works. You would have this immediate, physical proximity with a stranger you've never met before, and all of a sudden you guys were both doing something together that
They would kick your ass.
Yeah, and they would. They would always kick your ass. Or you would beat them a few times. It would be a little awkward, and they would leave.
Yeah.
Or then you had those moments too, the continue moments where you're running out of quarters.
Sure.
and or tokens for the really fucking shady arcades. And you would, try and flag your friend down to make you go get quarters while you're on your last life. Sure. God, I miss arcades. There's a moment in Tron Legacy that is kind of an homage back. It's it's Flynn's arcade. And the first time the kid walks into Flynn's arcade, and everything is dusty and the power's not on and it hasn't been activated in years, but all the cabinets are still there. And in the beginning of the original Tron, you see a lot of that hanging out in Flynn's arcade, no big deal. But in the new one, for whatever reason, the sound mix is just so incredible, such high fidelity sound.
Well,
probably
because got a lot to do with Daft Punk.
There's no Daft Punk in this scene, but I think because the Daft Punk is such high resolution audio and the rest of it, they kind of had to, up the ante for the measly arcade scene. Right. But when he throws the power on, he hits the switch on the circuit breaker, and every single arcade comes to life at the same time. It's the stuff you heard in King of Kong. It's just this soundscape that doesn't exist anymore in reality anywhere. It's not like anything you could ever hear. I mean, it's been recreated artificially through, through Game Room on Xbox, or through when they promoted Tron Legacy, they actually had recreated Flynn's arcade at a Comic-Con event or something. But just hearing all those arcade games make their own individual unique sounds, all pretty loud, and then just blending together, and you can identify individual pieces as if they're instruments, individual machines. And, on top of that, it starts pumping Journey's separate ways through the speakers. And then there's a Eurythmics song, Sweet Dreams, starts playing. And just the ambience of this huge room and the way the sound mixed together, it's why I love synthesizers. It's why there's a Nordlead 2 in our stupid little theme thing. I just love that fucking sound. And I'm so glad that it's been, reused in music and in stuff like Scott Pilgrim, as we'll see, because you can't get it anywhere else. It's just faded out of, there isn't an environment that recreates that. So as we're watching Tron, I'm trying to figure out the message of Tron. What is Tron trying to say to us? And, I can't pull a whole lot of anything out of it outside of computer-generated Olympics. Yeah. But there is that message early on about how computers will start thinking and people will stop. Sure. And, because of the writing in Tron, the messages are never... Yeah. They're clear when they're there, but I don't think they're that important. Right. But that's one of those things that that always kind of strikes me as bizarre. That people... I mean, do you think as machines get smarter, people become stupid as a result? Has the home computer made people stupid?
I know that my roommate, every time he leaves our apartment, will go onto Google Maps and Google Map the location that he is about to go to. Sure. Even if he's gone there 3 times earlier in the week. Right. Because he knows in his head he never has to remember where it is or how to get there, because he can always Google it. But I don't necessarily think that makes him a less intelligent human being.
It just seems practical to me. Yeah. See, that's the thing that's strange to me, is rather than needing to know how to read a map, for instance, or to carry a map with you at all times, or, what you're talking about, to just remember the street directions. I mean, I've lived in Chicago for years. I don't fucking understand the grid. I don't get the number system. When somebody says 3600 North Block, I don't know what the fuck that is. I still can't get to your apartment, or even to the studio we're in right now, without using Google Maps, despite the fact it seems like I come here every fucking day. But that's fine, because I feel like I have space in my head now for knowledge other than these dumb things that I mean, who needs to know how to get places? I do. If you run out of batteries on your fucking cell phone or whatever, maybe. But if you have a map with you at all times, this just seems like it's the kind of claim that when the compass came out, people probably fucking lobbied. You can't look in the sky and tell where north is. Right. People are getting so fucking stupid. And we didn't even really know why north was north at the time. Science has progressed so far since then. Technology has progressed so far, and we can do so many more amazing things. Just like filmmaking, just like we're talking about Tron and computer-generated imagery. That doesn't seem lazy or pointless or stupid. Right. It seems like an advancement. And I think it's so fucking hypocritical for Tron to make their movie out of technology. Yeah. And then talk about how computers are making people stupid.
Well, it seems like they weren't intentionally going to make it make it from computers when they had originally put together the script.
I think that was the goal. I don't mean to suggest that just because Disney wouldn't help them, they turned to computers. Yeah. I think that was always kind of the original intent. I think Pong and a lot of the arcade games were inspiration for that. What if people lived inside the machine? What would that look like?
Not like Tron.
So that gets to one of the strange art questions about this movie. It makes me really uncomfortable. And I'm not very good at articulating this because I've attempted to explain this to a couple people now. So maybe you can help me with that. This started bugging me after I saw Tron Legacy. But on the original Tron, it's true as well. The post-production work on this movie was done by over 500 people, right? So you look at the movie, the reason it has all this acclaim and people remember it years later is because of the visuals, because of the odd art style, and they film things, in black and white on high contrast stuff and add in all the computer whatnot. And that is a style that is really unique to Tron. When we see something, we can say it looks like Tron. It's a Tron-like design. And we know that because of that art style. But that art style, this is the opposite of the usual thing we talk about all the time on our show. One man, one vision. One guy went into his movie with a small crew and he did, 8 out of the 10 jobs. And so it's really the picture of the film he had in his head is what we're seeing on film. That's not the case with Tron. Tron is made by companies within departments. And something about that makes me really uncomfortable. I don't know. I feel maybe it's because I feel like I can't congratulate someone on the job they did. We do a movie on this show and we can usually congratulate the director. And even if there's, great lighting to it, that maybe we congratulate the director on helping assign that lighting style or on the set that day making those choices. Or we can congratulate the lighting department. Sure. But when you look at something like Tron and even more so Tron Legacy, there are so many, just rendering lighting effects on hair takes a crew of 12 people. Doesn't that just kind of become the daily grind? Isn't it just work at that point? Yeah. It seems less like art and more like an assignment. Sure. Can you imagine working on a project? You're in a band with a lot of people. You must already feel like the stuff you do kind of gets divided. It becomes out of your hands when all these people are collaborating on it. And if you have, how many people are in your band? 7. And how many people actually really write the music? I assume 2. None of them listen to the show, so that this is okay. 2. Yeah, so 2 people write the music, yourself included? Yes. So what if you really had 7 people writing the music?
They would not be a very good band. Right? And the songs would all be a little bit more generic. Nobody would really... You're right. I would come to rehearsal and do 1/7 of the work I do, so it wouldn't be that much. My heart wouldn't be... It would be 1/7 as much in it as it is now.
It almost seems
and you
like
multiply that times 500 and
right. It seems like a happy accident that movies like these come together. The entire Hollywood system bugs me for that reason. Just because even when a movie is good, when you look at the art style from Tron and say, wow, that's amazing, they're achieving something new. Who do you credit the guy who did the storyboards or the original art direction? Do you credit even the team who came up with the suits or how the suits coordinated with the background? There's probably a couple guys in charge of just making sure continuity-wise the suits and the backgrounds mixed together. The person, or not even person, but team in charge of textures on the 3D models, the people who do the 3D models. We're talking about hundreds, if not in a movie today, tens of thousands or maybe even hundreds of thousands of people between all these companies working on one film. It kind of drives me nuts. I'm curious people's thoughts on that. Doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. So I know it's been a very tangential conversation, but one of the reasons we wanted to cover the original on this show is because it's kind of getting swept under the rug a little bit. Right. It's 30 years old at this point now. And, Disney comes out with this new movie, and you would think maybe they really drag out the old Tron. They do a super deluxe edition box set.
Remaster.
Documentaries.
Interviews. And
in fact, Disney seems like they were trying to sweep the original Tron under the rug, despite the fact that Legacy was made by people who clearly love the original. There's a lot of people coming back. Jeff Bridges especially, who is just my new fucking favorite thing ever. I don't know why, but, it started with The Big Lebowski. And just from there, it's snowballing. Jeff Bridges is just awesome, and I love him. And you know what? I even love CG, Jeff Bridges. That whole thing, I think it's great. So the new movie makes all those references back to the old one, maybe to the point where it's just ripping the old one off, like ending your movie with a really long train ride. That's okay to do. It's just such an odd phenomenon because usually that's not how it's done. Usually you drag that original one out and you milk it as hard as you can. You do and you see that a lot with trilogies, especially something that starts a little obscure. Evil Dead, the success is exponential as the series goes on. The Mexico movies, Desperado becomes big. Once Upon a Time in Mexico is huge. Nobody knew what mariachi is, and so they package those together in box sets and they do crazy stuff with that. There's additional commentaries and stuff that wouldn't exist otherwise. Even the Sergio Leone stuff, I mean, Fistful of Dollars is not The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
That's true.
You know, that's probably the most popular film of that trilogy, but they don't try and pretend Fistful of Dollars doesn't exist. It's just so strange to me. Understandable, but something I've probably never seen a movie production company do. I guess Disney's done that with some of the stuff they're afraid of, because Disney is really concerned about their PR. You know, they're concerned about who puts Mickey Mouse where.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Marilyn Manson thing with the Mickey Mouse
Right.
ears, you know, just defiling Disney's copyright. But they're really particular about where the mouse goes. They're really particular about old movies they want to erase from their history because maybe the era the movie came out in wasn't, let's say, racially sensitive. And so it makes sense that Disney might try and say, old Tron, a little embarrassing. Let's pretend that didn't happen.
Well, and another thing that happened in pop culture that society seems to pretend never happened is Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, yeah, the whole movie, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, did not happen.
That movie came out the same weekend as The Expendables and that Julia Roberts thing.
Doesn't need to get tagged.
But
don't give a shit.
Essentially, nobody went to the theater to see Scott Pilgrim. It was a huge flop. And as far as I'm concerned, it was the best thing that's come out not only last year, but like in the past 5 years.
I was just fucking steamrolled by that movie. Yeah, I have not been that blown away, just overwhelmed second by second by a movie in a long time. It's just it's a constant assault of stuff.
Sure.
And there's the surprise factor there too, because there was a lot of advertising pumped into that movie. I've heard it. It's not like I had no idea what Scott Pilgrim was.
Right. You knew it was Edgar Wright. You knew all the actors that were in it. It was no surprises.
I knew what the premise of the movie was. I'd even seen the trailer, and yet I hadn't seen the movie, along with apparently the rest of the known universe. Had not seen the movie. And there didn't seem to be the kind of buzz afterwards. And maybe that's part of the mass exodus of double feature doesn't like video games thing.
That could be.
I think it's finding more of a following now that it's, you know, the home video market. Maybe these people just don't like going to theaters. You know what happened is they took people's arcades out of movie theaters.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on there. So let's just start at the beginning. Give me a little background. We have some actors in this movie that need a mention.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we should talk about Scott Pilgrim, who's played by Michael Cera. And as far as I'm concerned, Michael Cera is not a good actor.
Sure.
He is fucking great in this movie.
Yeah.
He is absolutely perfect for the role. I've never seen him in anything else that I liked him in.
Arrested Development, right?
But that was before I knew that that's all he could do.
Sure.
When he was in Arrested Development, that was fresh, that was new, that was funny, and then he recycled that until now.
But I think you'll agree with me then to say that Scott Pilgrim is ending that is all Michael Cera can do.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
clearly, whether he chooses to or not, he is capable of other things. It's some pretty fucking amazing things.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I wouldn't say he's unrecognizable because you see Michael Cera so often, his face just screams Michael Cera.
Yeah.
But just the character he's playing, the person he is, we keep waiting for these movies. You know, when we see someone like Michael Cera, every movie that comes out is almost pitched as, hey, look at Michael Cera, he's doing something new.
He has a mustache.
He even had that fucking movie where there's two versions of him and one is a mustache. I mean, they're just desperately trying to say, this is Michael Cera, but not like you know him, not like you've ever seen him before. And Scott Pilgrim wasn't trying to exploit that at all. It didn't come out and say, Scott Pilgrim, the movie where Michael Cera does something interesting.
Right.
But it was the movie where Michael Cera did something interesting.
And he's not the only one in it. So we have Jason Schwartzman, who plays Gideon, the final boyfriend.
Yeah.
Brandon Routh is the vegan boyfriend. He was Superman in Superman Returns. Chris Evans is boyfriend number 2, I believe.
Yep.
He's Captain America. He's Fantastic Four.
And then there's Bill Hader, who I don't want to overlook, who I thought at the time was Will Arnett, but is actually Bill Hader. And that voice is just amazing.
Yeah,
that
he's
good,
great.
Somewhere between exploitation voice and arcade voice, somewhere in there, brilliant.
Allison Pill, who plays Kim, who's my favorite character in the movie. She's the
Kim's
drummer.
got some great
She's
stuff here.
absolutely the funniest character in the movie for me. And then the actor that plays Knives' character is amazing. His roommate, Macaulay Culkin's brother. I think it's Rory Culkin, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah, he's absolutely hilarious in this film too. And then we also have Thomas Jane and Clifton Collins Jr.
Who's Thomas Jane?
Thomas Jane was one of the vegan cops.
Oh, really? I didn't recognize it. So when I said I was overwhelmed by this movie, I literally meant that. As I'm watching this thing, I just didn't know what to do with myself. You know, remember? Okay, so we did Enter the Dragon not too long ago, a couple weeks or whatever. And we were talking about the fight scenes and how, you know, didn't know anything about fighting or about dance, about choreography, and how they needed to be in slow motion to appreciate that. And that's actually how I felt about Scott Pilgrim. I needed to just slow the movie down so I could take this in. And this is an art form I actually understand. This is editing, which if there's any part, I know I talk lighting and shit all the time because that's stuff I'm learning now. But if there's anything I understand, it's sound and editing. Those are the only two jobs I've ever done on film anything. I do the editing for our show. I've been doing it every single week for 3 fucking years. I get editing and I love it. And this movie is throwing so much shit at me, I didn't even know where to start. It was completely overwhelming.
Sure. Well, it's super fast paced. It's Edgar Wright, who is notorious for his quick cuts, especially when he's setting something up, apparently not tying a shoe.
That was great too.
Yeah,
that was great that finally we get those Edgar Wright suiting up and it's a shoe tying and we take time to relax for it.
Right, but the whole film is incredibly fast paced, down to even some of the shooting, not even the editing, where they'll do a pan and somebody will change their clothes immediately. It'll cut from one person back to another person in a conversation, and they're on the street walking at this point. They're no longer in the practice room. They're no longer even on the street. They're in a club now. And it's all during the course of a single conversation.
The great stuff we talked about with Eternal Sunshine or with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Absolutely.
Those sort of on the set practical effects or stuff done in editing to make it look like it's a smooth transition right from that last scene. I'm watching this thing as if I've never seen the craft of editing before. I mean, it's throwing so much at me that I just feel like it's a new component of filmmaking. Everything's been in mono up until now, and I'm just hearing stereo for the first fucking time. And it's hard to talk about these things specifically on Double Feature because there's something notable and interesting. I mean, literally every few seconds. I'm not kidding. When the movie starts, and it starts to use some of the same stuff over and over, and it's okay. I mean, it's totally fine. You get a little bit more used to it. But when you're seeing every single one of those ideas, the first time you see writing on the wall, the first time you see someone's character stats, the first time a lot of that stuff happens,
the P meter,
the fucking P meter, there's just, it's too much. There's just it's not too much. It's fucking perfect. But I mean, there's so much that I can't even comprehend. I feel like I have to pause it maybe every 10 or 15 seconds to write something down. And so we're dealing with, music video fast editing and variation. That's an important part too, that we're not just cutting from thing to thing to thing. We're using a lot of variation in the type of edits we make, in the type of effects that they're using. They're all unique and they're very clever. There's almost a joke to each of it's like writing, one-liner after one-liner, just punchline, punchline, punchline in the editing. The amount of work and more so precision that goes into a single good edit, nonetheless a good edit every 10 seconds.
Right.
It's really astonishing. And that carries over in a lot of the fights too. But I mean, I could also do fucking 20 minutes on lighting. And fear not, I won't bore you with that. But the way it's used specifically in the beginning in transitional elements to move from one place to another, or the empty darkness with the spotlight, or when they're shutting the lights off. The scene where right before the power goes out at the party thing, or what, it's a party they're at, right? When the light shuts off and they kind of make a gag out of that. But also the color gels on lights, which especially in a comic book movie or a video game movie, not something you see very often because it's really easy to make, color gels, color lighting to look hokey. But you have it used, there's a really subtle one in the record store where she blows the pink, pink love thing, and it changes kind of the lighting of the store, and you only see that gag once. I mean, it's not something they repeat, although it clearly took time to create and set up and put together, and they deserve to be able to use that over and over, but they use it once. It's one trick, you leave your audience wanting more, you never see it again. And you have that same lighting a little bit more harshly in the vegan police scene with the green lighting, or the stage lights on the, the amp versus amp battle of the bands thing, the red lighting on the final fight. And it's just such a distinct look. It's fucking amazing. I really like it. I like the comic book titles too, the bubbles.
Sure.
I think the best place that's probably used, they make jokes out of some of that stuff too, but during the Battle of the Bands, when they're yelling the subtitles, you can barely hear anything.
Right.
It's great because in a movie, this is such a good idea. You can never hear anything at concerts, in nightclubs.
Right.
I've yet to see a movie where I feel like the mix is very true unless you can't tell what the characters are saying. And I think, here it's a comedy, so we can get away with a lot of the the stuff that might even be a little cheesy.
Yeah.
But I think all movies should just start. I'm going to advocate for subtitles. Just start putting subtitles over your concert band things.
That sounds like a good idea.
It's just, or make the characters scream at each other that they can't hear each other and leave. But the fact that they make a joke out of that is awesome. So there's a lot of video game references in here.
Well, they use a lot of even the score from the Zelda games. They 8-bit the Universal theme in the intro.
That's amazing.
Which is the best setup for the movie that you could ever ask for.
How do you not love the movie right when it starts?
Yeah.
And then they use the Universal again in one of the fights.
Right.
Where you get, I always have trouble with the timing on the drums. I don't know if you can do that, but I can never get
tough.
it. I don't know where the fuck, like, there's no kind of beat leading up to that, I guess. But the way they sync the movements in that fight or in the preparation of that right to those drums, it's awesome. And you're waiting for that in the beginning too, as you first see the 8-bit Universal logo and you're hearing the sound, I'm thinking, oh, I hope they do something with the drums. And they have this great bit crush thing. Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah, they do a lot of other video game reference stuff too. The life is a really huge.
Sure.
I mean, that's a plot point.
Yeah.
Where he gets a 1-up.
Right.
The other one that's really good is when he pulls the swords out of his chest. You see his stats go up.
Right.
Gideon's stats will go up.
Yeah.
All this kind of the verses that shows up in between the people who are going to fight. That's a
stuff.
Classic fighting game.
Yeah,
tactic.
the continue at the very end of the movie. I love that they're using stuff straight out of Zelda rather than making photos of you for Zelda. They're really using the Zelda stuff, especially that arrangement they use. I don't remember what part of you've played Zelda. What's the part where they have
the fairy fountain?
Yeah, that's exactly the one I'm talking about. Yeah, where they have this great arrangement
it's
for
when,
it in the movie.
It's when he's in the hallway of the classroom.
Sure.
And it starts 8-bit and then he goes out and it's all choral and she's standing outside his door.
Right, something that the movie decided to create based on a previous work. It's just giving a gift. It's beyond saying, hey, you played Zelda, you like Zelda, that's cool, let's put the theme in here. They're recreating pieces from Zelda in a way you've never heard them before. And it's amazing. It's just this present to an audience they're already clearly pandering to. But then the coins. The coins are one of my favorite things. Every time, he kills somebody, there's an explosion of coins. The coin outlines at the ending. And what I really love, we haven't dropped the C word once yet. Not cunt, which is a word I don't say nearly enough on the show. But Canada.
Right.
They're Canadian coins. And so I lived in Canada very briefly for maybe 4 or 6 months or something. And so the Canadian references are awesome down to who's a Canadian and an American in the movie because they all fucking look like Canadians, or the CN Tower stuff, or just the jabs they make at Canada. But I remember one of the weirdest things about living there was they didn't have $1 or $2 bills. A $5 bill was the lowest they had. And they had these weird looking coins for the 1 and 2. And so you see that at the very end. It's the first time you get a close-up glimpse.
Right.
And of course, they're in Canada, so it's all Canadian coins, which is just hilarious to me. One of the other things that's great is they have the Canadian band in there, or the band that's just in Canada, I guess. Clash of the Demon Head?
Demon Head.
Yeah, and I think I actually saw that band about 100 times while I was in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just the time I was there or the kind of shows I was seeing. They're playing with the Birthday Massacre all the time. Just different variations of that band. It, of course, wasn't literally the band from the movie.
Right.
And it wasn't even the same band every time. But I think every act that ever opened for the Birthday Massacre was that fucking bad. To the point where when the band started playing, I kind of went, oh, I know this song.
Yeah.
Or I recognize the singer or something. Or it sounds like fucking Jackalope or something. And I couldn't tell. It's just that one goddamn Canadian band.
Well, that's the band thing is the second big part of the film that I identify with. The first part being video games.
Yeah.
And the second part is the
small time band.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean it can be summed up in the fucking scene where they get invited to open for the Clash at Demon Head.
Sure,
and they're playing a secret show before their big show at wherever, it doesn't really matter. But they invite Sex Bob-omb to open for them. And
who does the Sex Bob-omb music, by the way?
Oh yeah, all the Sex Bob-omb music is Beck.
That's awesome.
With like a broken bass.
The idea of forcing a professional, well-known band to play with shitty instruments, or an artist to play with, I think that would be great if by everybody's 5th album, they have to just use shit instruments. Yeah. They have to use a crappy, beat-up microphone that was found backstage nobody wanted after a gig in a rundown uptown alley. They have to use a distorted bass. It's probably not even a distorted bass, but just one with a broken speaker. And just these fucking trash can tin piece of shit drums. And the songs are still cool.
Oh, yeah,
it's
they're great.
It just shows
They're
off
perfect.
it's kind of when, bigger bands start doing acoustic sets just to show off their songwriting skills. I think they should just keep with the grunge stuff and instead do sets with broken bullshit instruments.
But anyway, there's this scene where they're talking about having this secret show, and Scott doesn't want to open for his ex-girlfriend. It says, why don't we have our own secret show? And Kim says, all of our shows are secret shows.
Sure, of course they are.
That is the embodiment of being in a small-time upstarty band, which I've been in 30 of in my lifetime.
Sure.
It's every show's a secret show. You have one guy that thinks you're really huge,
right?
And then you have the real. It's always the drummer too. The drummer's the realist who puts down every big ballooned idea that the singer might have,
right?
And it's so accurate how you practice in some guy's living room and that guy's not in your band, but he's at all the shows on stage for no reason.
You've definitely had the one guy. You might have had two guys who weren't in your band at some point.
I think I've had that multiple times. I can think of them by name. I won't say it because that would be mean.
I do remember a guy in your band who played video games at some point.
Well,
that was his instrument, right? He played a video game on stage.
That was Scott Pilgrim in a nutshell. That whole when the video gamer was in my band, that was when my band was just a blueprint for Scott Pilgrim, minus the fighting.
Oh God, you brought me into fighting, and I didn't even get to talk about gloom rock or sadcore.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a shame. Well, another show for another day, I guess. Little jokes like that. I mean, just odd, small things to catch. This movie seems like it's probably littered with about 100 trillion Easter eggs, even in just the sound stuff. But during the fights, all throughout the movie, you have sound stuff from various mobile devices or computer platforms, probably every variation of system from every era, whether it's a video game machine or a beaten, Windows 95 startup, calendar alarms. There's the classic dial-up stuff, the Mac startup on there. The sound's amazing in the fights too. Maybe
the
it's just
Seinfeld theme? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I wasn't talking about that one. God, the music and the sound in this fucking movie. That whole scene is amazing. That whole Seinfeld fucking stupid scene.
I'm sorry, I've derailed you. You're talking about the fights here.
Right. Yeah, and so that's where you get a lot of the word bubbles. You get a lot of the coins flying out. You get a lot of the action. When we talked on Equilibrium about how they realized glass shattering made the violence more violent, here it's just coins flying around. It's that same metal hitting pavement sound. And they're using it here to make violence more brutal, even though it's really cartoony.
Well, and the other thing that the fights do that is really effective is they use a lot of anime fighting techniques. Where the character is positioned in the frame. They're not moving, but the background is a blur. And their hair is flaring. And their fist is out, and they're in your head. They are soaring at a high rate of speed, ready to punch somebody. That's probably my favorite aspect of all the fighting, is that there's this anime sensibility about it, which I don't even really like anime, but putting it in real life.
Yeah, it's the comic book stuff, right? I mean, before it was anime, it was manga or however you pretentiously want to pronounce that. And it's just to celebrate, because Scott Pilgrim is, after all, a comic book, a graphic novel. One that I don't think had even finished as a series before the movie came out, which is awesome. And you hear, as he's replaying his second life, the guy makes the reference to how the movie is never as good as the comic book. And I just want to shake that man's hand as he walks by. That whole scene, and he comes in and kicks ass. Not just that fight, but all 6 of the 7X's fights. They do cheat a little bit by kind of combining one into a fight. But I mean, normally a movie with 7 boss battles.
3.
Would have 3 real battles and 4, did I add that up right?
Yeah, you're right.
And 4 fluff bullshit battles.
That end with a conversation, that end with a single move, or that just happen off screen.
Yeah, right. One that maybe you throw away as a joke, and because the joke was really funny, you push someone off a cliff, and that ends the battle. They fall off a cliff,
or they have a heart attack.
Sure,
if you want to go back to the Child's Play, Killapalooza.
But I mean, really the closest you get to that is skateboarding to death.
Yeah.
Or,
but that's after a fight.
It is after a fight.
He throws Scott at the castle before that.
Oh, that's awesome too.
The thing
at the castle. Well, and you also get away with that because you're then doing a call out to the Tony Hawk games, the skate game, or what I always love, the SSX tricky games, the amped kind of games, where you're accumulating points, kilometers, of course, because it's fucking Canadian, as he's going down the ramp. Love that.
And then you also get the thing. So the thing that we briefly mentioned is that there's kind of a cheating moment where you lump 2 of the X's together, and they're the Asian DJ twins.
Yeah, right.
They're Daft Punk, essentially. But that immediately gets quashed as being a cop-out when it's a battle between the double dragon
Right.
and a fucking garbage beast.
They give you more than you sign up
It's
for.
absolutely better. I mean, it's at that point I'm willing. It's as if they went, do you want to see 2 individual boss fights, or do you want to see a double dragon fight a garbage beast?
Right.
And
right.
I immediately opt for, the second option.
But I think they give you more than that in the final battle, too.
Sure.
Not only do you get to see the battle twice, but then the girls are fighting, and then there's a team thing that happens.
Yep.
So you do really get 7 fights out of the movie.
At
You might
least.
get more. Yeah,
Sure.
you might get. And each fight
Well,
is
he even
unique
fights-
in its own way.
Well,
It's-
he even fights the lesbian chick twice.
Right,
Before
right.
he makes her come by tapping her underknee.
weird. And they're brutal. They're amazing.
They're
the
fantastic.
choreography is really great. The Michael Cera is really great. Everybody in the fight.
The side dialogues, even when people
Yeah.
pipe in, his roommate, oh yeah, go fight, here we go.
Yes, I love that. All the stuff on the balcony. Everything adds to it. None of it is ever filler. None of it ever takes away from anything. It's all just constantly making if you're overwhelmed by the first frame, by the end, I don't know how you could be anything less than blown the fuck away. I don't know how people, I can think back to so many shows where I ended. I don't know how people aren't talking about this movie.
That's how I feel.
Also, briefly, Glitchy Boss looks awesome. Congrats, film. Thanks.
Do 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 do.
All right, so there's a website, doublefeatureshow.com. There is an email address, doublefeatureshow@gmail.com. And we have an iTunes, so you can leave a little comment dealy on there. Aside from Facebook, the only other thing we ask is donate.doublefeatureshow.com. So there's usually 2 reasons you should donate, but today there's 3 reasons you should donate. One, of course, is the subscription payments. Those people all get a little vocal sample. We're going to take a sample from your voice and put it in our stupid intro thing with
the
an
last show of the year.
8-bit keyboard, and awesome, totally awesome. The other thing is that you can send us your recommendations for movies, and we're going to pick 2 of the movies people recommend, put them together on the show. The third reason is that we have another Killapalooza coming up next time on the show.
That's right. We're gonna do one of those. We're going back to the 80s.
Sure.
Being born in the 80s. But
I didn't know it was an 80s one. I had no idea about that.
Starts in the 80s, but it wraps in 2008.
Oh, beautiful, sir.
So but it's only 5 films. It's actually only 4 films, but we're not even going to discuss that until next week. If you can get your hands on all 4 of the 5 Sleepaway Camp films,
yes, Sleepaway Camp.
we're going to be in for a really good time next week.
If you can get your hands on all 5 of the 5 Sleepaway Camp films,
Watch more fucking film.
bye.
And Planet of the Apes, that was that show.
But go back, listen to that show. You didn't watch Colossus, the Forbin Project. I know you didn't watch it. So go back and watch that movie and listen to that show. But for now, it's fucking Tron time. So a long time ago, we said Disney films on the show.
Right.
Is that what this is?
Yeah, no. I mean, kind of.
I think it's cheating that this is our first Disney film.
That's exactly the way we should do it.
It's kind of the black sheep of the Disney films.
It's more like the glowing blue sheep.
I was going to say the black sheep of the Disney films are the incredibly racist cartoons that they decided to kind of pull off shelves and not release on DVD. But this is our way of doing a Disney film.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to sort of pick, I don't even know if I would call Tron the underdog.
No.
It's a weird spot it's in now because of Tron Legacy.
Yeah, well, also it's mass cult appeal, which apparently I still don't understand.
That puts it in double feature territory,
Yeah,
though,
for
doesn't
sure.
it? Yeah, the cult appeal could come from a couple places, I guess. It comes from a little nostalgia, which we'll talk about that today.
Yep.
And I think that's the only place the cult appeal comes from.
There's some other thing that makes people really latch onto Tron, but I don't have it. It's not in my brain.
Well, so there's a lot of notable stuff it does.
Mm-hmm.
So we have cult appeal, we got notable stuff, totally double feature worthy.
Absolutely.
Right away. But beyond that, I know people our age, people who didn't grow up with Tron.
Well, boys, looks like you started the fun without me.
You're all sick. Every last one of you.
We're going to need a bigger gun.
What's the matter? You scared of things that go boom, boom, boom?
Give me one goddamn reason why I shouldn't blow your goddamn brains all over that goddamn wall.
The screaming Nord Lead 2 synthesizer, one of the many keyboards you will hear on today's show. My name is Eric. I'm here with keyboard playing Michael Kester.
I have been known to play a keyboard once or twice in my
on
life.
occasion, I guess.
Yeah.
And man, just fucking ready to. Today's feature, I guess, is a beep boop, beep boop. That's about all I have.
Pretty good.
This is, in fact, a double feature. There are going to be 2 movies. And why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what those goddamn movies are? What's the first one?
We're gonna do Tron.
So the one from like last year that has the stuff and the things.
No, the like Tron.
Oh, due to Disney's brain wipe, I've never actually heard of that film, so
Yeah.
that should be interesting.
And then we're gonna do Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh my god! So we have some fucking spoilers. We're gonna spoil both movies, of course. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about both the original Tron and some Tron Legacy stuff. We'll sprinkle it. Completely created from the machine.
Like a light cycle?
Yeah, like the light cycle scenes. And, not even a lot of the backgrounds of the movie, because backgrounds, matte painting, that stuff has existed since people were using cars in movies. Since fucking Metropolis, right? I mean, that stuff's existed for a long time. But this isn't just using computers to make a funny background and put it into the movie. This is generating objects that move inside your film that are completely made by computers. The bit, the light cycles, basically anytime anything computer animated also moves. There's motion as well.
Right.
That kind of animation I would consider computer generated imagery. And I think Tron should get a huge credit for bringing computers into movies.
It should also get an equal discredit for bringing computers into movies.
I was just going to say, that's not always been a great thing.
Right.
But in rare occasions, it's done some pretty great stuff.
Well, yeah, I would definitely say that, and I've always said this, that there is a place in film for computer generation.
When did you say that? I've never heard that out of your fucking mouth.
I've always thought that, like, you can use it. Don't use it in lieu of something that would clearly make a better decision.
Right.
Don't do it because it's easy. Don't do it because it's an easy way out. And yeah, it looks good enough. We talked about this back, last year when we did Lawnmower Man in Jurassic Park?
Sure, and any movie that's ever had models, particularly, who loved the movie, had never seen it before, recent years, and who aren't in it because it was the first movie to do this, or, I guess those are the 2 reasons, right?
Yeah.
First movie to do this, or nostalgia. I don't know why. I've tried to get coherent reasons out of these people, but there's several of them. And so there's an audience for this movie even today. So it's a film that's, it's only kind of Disney. It's
PG, or G rated. That's Disney enough for me. If a film is PG or G rated, that just, as far as I'm concerned, it's Disney.
It might as well be Disney, even if Disney Co. did not have anything to do with it. The financial backing and basically the script edits came from Disney. So they decided, we'll pay for this movie. They were essentially the producer.
Sure.
But they wouldn't help with anything beyond the money. When the people who made Tron actually went to them to ask about animation, they said, fuck it. Animators, we don't have any of those here. Don't know what you're talking about, man.
Disney is not an animation-based company.
Yeah, we don't have an animation studio. We cannot help you. So they turned to the machine. This is often cited as the original film to really use CGI. And when I say CGI, I want to make that distinction too. We talked about that before. Not computer enhancements,
right,
but actually computer-generated imagery.
Right.
Things throughout, let's say. So if you really give a shit about what happens in either of those movies, and you don't, then you can use the chapters to skip over to Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yep.
Probably the last time I'll use the full title of that film. Also, I'll be really honest with you. I'm going to talk about arcades a lot. And totally understand if you get bored with that, use the fucking chapters, skip to the next movie. I'm really excited about this show today because normally I'm the only one who geeks out on the show.
Right.
And I have to excuse myself all the time when I talk about something technical or nerdy. And I think that's just that's the fucking core of both of these movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Every time we mention a video game on the show, there's seriously a mass exodus of our listenership.
Yeah.
You can see that in the traffic numbers in our website, in the iTunes feed. People leave, about 2/3 of our audience leaves every time we make a video game reference.
Yep.
Even now that I've used the term video game twice, I would say 9/10 of our listenership has shut off their portable music playing device. My point was that I don't like being told what to do, and I know you're probably not a fan of that either, so fuck those people who already left, who probably didn't download the show to begin with. We're just going to have to talk some games today.
Yeah.
If you want one of those shows that's heavy and real message and cute computers and AI, and watch Colossus.
Yeah,
right?
we did that with the Colossus and